Good morning. My name is John Patterson. I'm a Hempcrete building instructor, and I'm going to do a fire test of some different materials that we commonly use to build our homes, and then we're going to compare that with how Hempcrete performs. Now, to give you an introduction, what we replace using the Hempcrete material is the drywall, the insulation, the exterior boarding, house wrap, the siding, and in some cases an extra piece of styrofoam that goes on the exterior, all with one thermal wall system that's more energy efficient, breathable, healthier, uses mostly natural materials mixed with a lime-based binder. It's more comfortable, longer lasting, less maintenance. A lot of advantage to the Hempcrete monolithic thermal wall system that we build here, like you see in this example. So you can tell that it completely surrounds the framing. We use a regular frame. We don't use it to replace anything structural. We don't use it to replace the foundation, only the thermal wall system. But as you can see, we're replacing a lot of stuff with the Hempcrete monolithic thermal wall system. So anyway, let's get to the test here. Well, I'm going to first, you see I got a camp stove here, and I'm doing a little different test than maybe what you've seen around. And the reason for that is when you use a plumber style torch, you actually are concentrating all the heat in one place. We're going to spread it out a little bit more, kind of how a fire might start inside of our house or approach it from the outside as well. A lot of house fires, more house fires are actually started from inside the house than outside, so we always got to remember that. Most people don't live in a forest. If you do live in a forest, of course you need to be concerned about both indoor and outdoor starting fires. So I just want to make a claim. This is a demonstration only. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove anything to the building departments. It's just a demonstration of what this material, when I put it up to a flame, based on some of these other materials, and if I put it up to a flame, what happens. So enjoy. It's recreational. It's fun. But maybe it explains a little bit about some of these different materials and what we're using to build our houses as well. So I'm putting a mask on because I'm going to start with some of the stuff that I know puts off a pretty good black plume of smoke, as you'll see. And I learned the hard way when I did it one other time and inhaled a little bit too much. So you shouldn't try this at home unless you know what you're doing and you're willing to take a little bit of risk. So let's start with the drywall here. Gotta put it up here and see if we can get it close to here. Material. See what happens. It's not as hot as the one that puts it directly on there, but like I said, this is, if your carpet catches on fire, maybe this is about how hot the drywall might get. So, of course you have a layer of paint on it. I don't have a layer of paint on this, but the paint actually has some chemicals and things like that, and maybe some fire retardants, but the paint likely would melt fairly quickly under this heat, and then you would be exposed to the paper of the drywall. So this is our fire, this is what keeps things from burning. Now, this is a pretty clean burning stove. I don't know if you can see the little bit of smoke coming off of the drywall paper. Now you can see the drywall paper kind of starting to have its own flame to it as it spreads across the paper. The thing I notice, you can't really see it, but I can smell it now. The paper is actually a toxic, it burns really black, as you can see. You can see a little bit of it coming off now, but whenever the surface gets as black as it does now. So drywall does pretty good. It's rated at an hour. My point is here, you put a piece of paper on it, and it actually helps to increase the amount of smoke. And as we've been told since we were kids, smoke is what actually kills us in a fire. So it keeps the flame from spreading pretty good. That's not too bad at all. It keeps the insulation from burning. However, if you had a hole in the drywall or something like that, you could imagine that the flame would spread pretty quickly through there. So that's a little toxic burn if the drywall catches fire. Gypsum itself obviously doesn't burn. Well, let's look at a few more things from maybe the outside and how they might catch fire also before we test the actual hempcrete. I'll take a chance because that's so hard to talk with. Well, let's say well, the insulation, this part of it probably pretty fire resistant. One of the terms they use is non-combustible. That means it doesn't catch fire or catch other things on fire. But you can see it does. There's something in there that wants to put off some toxic smoke. You can see it coming off of there. But again, look at what they put on the face of it. I don't know. Maybe they put enough fire retardant in this stuff that it doesn't catch fire. But let's see here what happens. Put that on there. Oh, okay, so there we go. That's what happens to insulation when it burns. I probably should have had my mask on this one. That was fast. That's what goes up against your drywall inside of your home. So if that insulation catches fire, that's a toxic problem. Now, well, what about this? I thought metal and styrofoam, so I did test it a little bit, but let's put it on this flame and see if they put an extra. Oh, man. What do you think? Not good. Alright. This was a good idea, probably. I'm going to try the Tyvek and then 2 pieces of carpet while I got my mask on at the same time, and you draw your conclusion. This is house wrap. It goes on the outside of the house, required in many areas. This is what green building. This is the type of green building that's going on. This here is a piece of siding. They use it for soffit and things like that. That stuff's nasty when it melts and burns. See that smoke? That's why I'm not talking. I got to leave my mask on a bit. Alright, that covers the wall system. What about our floors? Safety first. That's nasty. That is frickin' nasty. I'm going to put it up to the hempcrete wall. I made this wall. I made this sample, which is about 3.5 inches thick, and we most always go about 9 on our thermal wall system. But this one was made pretty specifically for the fire test, and so I did this at a demonstration that we did down at Hands on Hemp in Denver at Hood Lab. And so we made this 3 years ago, and so it's pretty dry. I mean, it's been sitting in my shop. It hadn't hardly had any exterior moisture enter into it, so we know that it's a pretty good representation of what's going to be there in a few years. Now, one of the things about this everybody asks me is what's the R value, and it's about a 2.4 according to the British Council that has tested this material over in Europe. Hundreds of homes, literally thousands of homes, have been built out of technology that's similar to this. And I got my start a few years ago when I got introduced to Steve Allen out in Wisconsin for a 3-day workshop where Original Green Distribution organized the event and had us all in there, and we learned how to make the hempcrete. I got to know Steve and got his book and studied it really hard, and had him out in Colorado for a workshop, a 3-day workshop here, a little tiny house that we built down in Berthoud. And so anyway, so the flame's been on there a little bit while I'm explaining some different things about hempcrete. But if you notice, you're seeing maybe a little bit of deterioration from the material under a flame like this, but you're not seeing any smoke. That's the first thing that I noticed. And you're not seeing it actually spread a flame like a lot of these other things where I could take the flame off of most of this other stuff other than the drywall. You can take the flame off of it. I don't have to have my mask on this one. Well, since I leaned the siding forward a little bit, I'll go ahead and lean the hemp towards a little bit and see if we can get it to catch fire a little bit more over a wider surface, and I don't know, not that much less intense heat of the propane torch, but it is over a wider area surface, and maybe this mimics type of a furnace flame, or you can imagine if your carpet caught on fire, how that would catch on fire and maybe produce a flame to this extent. If you happen to have a propane heater that malfunctioned and the propane started spewing out, maybe this is a little more representation of what this flame might be about. I don't know if anybody's timing me. I didn't time it. But what you're really trying to do is get an idea of whether or not the flame is going to spread from the material. You also want to know how it deteriorates and things like that. And they've done some tests on some straw bale homes that I was watching the other day. And all you really have with the straw bale home is the protection of the plaster. And then after the plaster, you're right down to really flammable plant material. And so you can see on our block here, we actually have a layer of plaster and then this all the way in between to the other side. So whether the fire comes from the inside or outside, it's got a long way to go to where it actually completely devastates the wall system under a flame such as this. So some of the things that you'll learn in the workshop is obviously how to mix this material, and then we'll be making a little brick about this size, and then we'll be making another one of these. Each of you will get a brick or a snowball or something to take home with you, whatever you'd like to make. You can make a heart or be artistic or anything like that. But yeah, we teach you how to make a little wall system and how that stuff packs in and all that. But some of the other things we'll talk about in the class are how to discuss with the building department why this is a good method. And you might want to show them the video of some of the stuff that they're approving right and left and things like that. And especially if you're in a fire-prone area, this is a good demonstration, because I've actually had it on there quite a while. If you want to make a comment online, if you did happen to time it when I put it on here, let me know. If I had a lovely assistant, maybe she would be timing it for me. So there's still no noticeable smoke at all coming off of this. I think the lime has a little bit of an odor when it gets hot, maybe, but maybe it's a little bit of plant material, but really not much is catching on fire at all under pretty intense heat. This little stove boils water in no time. And yes, I'm letting it climb up the wall, but that's because it mimics a actual fire and the actual fire test that they do for flame spread. Anyway, let's see. I pull that away from the fire, and you can see it is not on fire. It's a little bit deteriorated, that material, but the main thing is it would take a little while before it actually got through 9 inches of the wall system to where it would be actually on fire. So you can see as I pull it away, I don't really see any red. It's pretty hot right there where I had the flame directly. That's because the hempcrete actually soaks up the heat. You know, it gathers some heat. So it's essentially what it's doing, and it'll probably be hot for a little while, and we'll see if it catches on fire later or not. I don't think it will. Like I say, this is 3 years old dry. I put it under some pretty intense heat for quite a while. Firefighters, they get to your house, you know, hopefully in pretty expedient order, and they put out whatever was causing this to start on fire. And if you're in a fire-prone wildfire area, it's a little bit different story. It might be a while before they get there. But if you can imagine, if this did have the layer of exterior plaster on it, then it would be even more resistant to the fire.